just stays on, and now we're a little closer to you without expanding.
Okay. Did you press the start thing yet?
We're on.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pada Ki Jai, Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami Pada Ki Jai, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Pada Ki Jai. Ananda Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So, we had a little complication in trying to figure out how I was going to read these articles, because they're on the website of Srila Bhaktivigyan Bharati Maharaj, and that website is Vishuddha Chaitanya Vani. And I have to use my phone to read them, or I have to use any kind of device like a iPad or whatever that can connect to the internet. But since we've been using my phone, obviously I can't read off that phone when the phone is broadcasting a live video on Facebook. So what I did was I used my phone. That's why there's been a delay in order to connect that phone Wi-Fi to my laptop. And then when I had my laptop on Wi-Fi, then I was able to download these articles onto the laptop. So I have them in front of me now. And there's a few, we had a class this afternoon, probably a couple of the devotees or whoever is connecting up for this evening class and has been doing regularly, then you know that we usually start about a half an hour earlier than this. But now I figured out what to do with this, and we had a class this morning for our community here in New Braj about these three acharyas, and we covered some of the biographical materials and so forth, but there's so much more left. And so I wanted to continue with that topic. There's one particular topic that I wanted to continue with, which was kind of started. It was the topic of how glorious is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. How it is the pinnacle of all literatures. And who's telling that? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself is telling that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the article where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur there's a whole discussion there, how he's talking with one great scholar. So, let me just find it on the article here. Guess what? It doesn't seem to, oh wait, it's still loading or something. Oh, okay, maybe. Let's see now if it works. Yes. Okay. I'm going to the bottom of the article. Actually, I'm going to read from the beginning, because I don't know if Rajendra Nandan Prabhu read the whole article. Yeah, he read this article. Vaishnava is Guru.
You have a number of visitors.
Yeah, okay. The story is here. about how he was given the garland to bless him to write Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Yes. Well, anyway, I'm going to start from the beginning of this article. So this was spoken by Srila Bhaktivigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj on October 5th, 2014 and October 24th, 2015. So they've combined these two kathas given by Srila Bharati Goswami Maharaj. Now the speciality of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Jamatpur in Katha district. It is the place of birth and the parental home of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Srila Kaviraj Goswami, he did not mention the name of his parents nor of his Diksha Guru anywhere in his writings. Yet he repeatedly cited the names of his Siksha Gurus at the beginning and or conclusion of each chapter. That is his speciality. What did he write? H.I. Guru Siksha Guru J. Amar Tan Sabar Pada Padme Koti Namaskar. This is from the very first chapter of Adi Leela, verse 37, where he's paying his obeisances to his instructing spiritual masters. And who is he telling are his instructing spiritual masters? These 6 gurus. H.I. Guru. Siksha Guru Jayamar. That means the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. He's accepting them as his Siksha Gurus, and he's saying, therefore, I offer millions of respectful obeisances unto their lotus feet. Koti Namaskar. Koti means 10 million. So that's how he's beginning Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then some persons, they say that Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is his Siksha / Diksha Guru, and others say it is someone else. But there's an end note, which we'll read later. So now, the next section is titled Vaishnava is Guru. In the temple of Sri Govindaji, there used to be daily recital of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Temple of Govindaji in Vrindavan. Srila Rupa Goswami had established that temple. And every day there was a recital of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. However, there is no narration of Chaitanya Dev's pastimes after the acceptance of sannyas in that scripture. So Srila Haridas Goswami, who was the chief servitor of the Govindaji temple, he requested Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to describe Chaitanya Dev's pastimes after his acceptance of sannyas. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was highly esteemed in the society of Vaishnavas for his composition named Govinda Lilamrita. What is that? Here's an explanation. This is an important and unique piece of literature for the Gaudiya Vaishnava community, composed with the sole purpose of inspiring the devotees to contemplate the daily 8-fold pastimes of Radha and Krishna and their associates in Vrindavan. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he considered, Vaishnava is Guru, and thus it is my duty to follow his order without hesitation. And moreover, due to my advanced age, my eyesight has become weak, my hands tremble while writing, and my ears cannot hear properly. Nevertheless, it is the order of a Vaishnava, so what to do? I cannot ignore the order of Guru and Vaishnavas, and at the same time I am unqualified to abide by it. This is my predicament. So here we see that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was being directly requested by Srila Haridas Goswami, the chief servitor of the Govindaji temple. And he's being requested to describe Chaitanya Dev's pastimes after his acceptance of sannyas. So we were telling this morning that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the biography, the authorized biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, written by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, there are also three divisions of that literature: Adi, Madhya, and Sheshakanda, means like Antyakanda. Just like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are three sections: beginning, middle, end. So, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he was a worshipper of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. He accepts Vrindavan Das Thakur as who? Srila Vyasadeva incarnate, for writing all the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So all the Vaishnavas at that time, they were immersed in hearing the nectar pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that had been written in the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. But they were so much yearning to hear the later pastimes, because in Chaitanya Bhagavat, the most of the entire book, the whole Adi and Madhya Lila, they're very long, and they describe only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes before he took sannyas at the age of 24 years. So from his birth until 24 years. And all this nectar of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan, Lila, Navadvip Dham, and so forth. But when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, it's described there, then the Antya or Sheshakanda started. But the Sheshakanda is not long, and he just touched upon certain pastimes. So the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava community in Vrindavan, they were so much desirous of hearing the later pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they knew that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was the greatest poet. Kaviraj means poet. And Rasika Vaishnava, because he had written the Govinda Lilamrita. As we told, this is Sri Radha Govinda's daily eightfold pastimes and their associates in Vrindavan. So they approached him, and specifically this very authoritative devotee, Haridas Goswami, chief servitor of the Govindaji temple. He requested Kaviraj Goswami to describe Chaitanya Dev's pastimes. So this little section is called, the title is Vaishnava is Guru. So the important point is that Srila Kaviraj Goswami, he considered Vaishnava is Guru. Thus it is my duty to follow his order without hesitation. So not only the Guru who has given you Diksha is Guru, but any exalted, pure Mahabhagavat Vaishnava, he is Guru. So Kaviraj Goswami wanted to be submissive to Haridas Goswami and the other great Vaishnavas in Vrindavan. So therefore he considered, it is my duty to follow his order without any hesitation. Moreover, he considered that my advanced age, my eyesight has become weak, my hands tremble while writing. He was very elderly at that time. My ears cannot hear properly, but nevertheless, it is the order of a Vaishnava, so what to do? I cannot ignore the order of Guru and Vaishnavas. At the same time, I am unqualified to abide by it. This is my predicament. So the next section is titled The Real Author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami surrendered to the Sambandha Adi Deva. Sambandha Adi Deva means Sri Madan Mohan. He is the deity of Sambandha Tattva. And Madan Mohan deity he is predominating over this Sambandha Gyan, means the understanding of our relationship with Krishna. So he prayed, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami prayed, what shall I do in this time of predicament? I cannot transgress the order of a Vaishnava. Agya Guru Nam Hi Avacharaniya. This is a statement. It means the order, the Agya of Guru, of the spiritual master, must be obeyed without consideration. In other words, Avacharaniya. Don't try to figure out the order. Simply, without hesitation, you should follow that order. So Krishnadas Kaviraj is thinking, this is my situation now. So what is my duty in such a situation? And just then, as he was praying to the Madan Mohan deity, the flower garland from the neck of Madan Mohan fell, and Gosai Das Pujari offered that prasadi garland to him. Then, accepting this as an indication of Sri Madan Mohan's permission, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami began writing the scripture. So in that scripture, he said, E granta lekai more Madan Mohan, Amar likan jena shukera patan. This is in the 8th chapter of Adi Lila. He's telling, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is writing there, actually Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is not my writing, but the dictation of Sri Madan Mohan. My writing is like the repetition of a parrot. He admitted this. And he repeatedly states this. Shuka is a bird, a parrot, who will repeat what you speak to him. Whatever Madan Mohan dictates to me, I write only that. So now the next section is called Atheists Can Be Liberated, but not hypocrites. Atheists, yes, they can be liberated, but not hypocrites. So the story is now that in the house of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, there was a regular nightly kirtan. And one Brahmin named Gunarnava Mishra was engaged in the service of the deities there. Gunarnava Mishra. And a very great devotee of Nityananda Prabhu named Sri Minaketana Ramdas, he was invited by the brother of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So hence, he paid a visit there in this nightly kirtan. Now, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's brother, he possessed strong faith in Sri Chaitanya Dev, but very little faith in Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Here's the statement in Adi Lila chapter 5. Chaitanya Prabhute tar Shudridha Vishwas, Nityananda Pratitar Vishwas Abbas. This means that he's telling, my brother had firm faith in Lord Chaitanya, but only a dim glimmer of faith in Lord Nityananda. So observing this, Sri Minaketana Ramdas broke his flute and he went away contemplating, where there is no respect for my Prabhu, Nityananda, I cannot remain there. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami rebuked his brother, saying, Kimva donha na mania how to pashanda eke mani are na mani e matabhanda. He told to his brother, rebuking him, it would be better to be an atheist by slighting both brothers than a hypocrite by believing in one and slighting the other. Srila Krishnadas Goswami, Kaviraj Goswami addressed his brother as Bhanda, means a hypocrite. Why? For not regarding Sri Nityananda Prabhu and respecting only Sri Chaitanya Dev. There is hope of liberation for a Pashanda, an atheist, but not for a bhanda, a hypocrite. So saying this, he rebuked his brother. And Lochan Das Thakur, he is also mentioned. Lochan Das Thakur has written, Je deshe mor nitai nai, se deshe na jabo, nitai vimukha janer mukha na heribo. This means, I have taken a determined lifelong vow that I will never ever visit that place, even in my dreams, where the holy name of Nityananda is not known. I will never even desire to see the face of a person who is even minutely or indirectly averse to the holy name and glories of Lord Nityananda. I refuse to see the face of persons who are averse to Sri Nityananda. So now, the next section is titled Vrindavan, the Mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. A very interesting story, how Nityananda Prabhu, after this incident with his brother, hypocrite brother, now Nityananda Prabhu appeared in his dream. So on that very night, Nityananda Prabhu ordered Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in a dream. He said, you should leave for Vrindavan, and there you will attain all perfection. So, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is narrating this incident in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, by saying this, I may attract some fame, but I am helpless because if I do not speak, I will incur the fault of being ungrateful. So what is he talking about? He's talking about this dream. He's a little hesitant because if Nityananda Prabhu appears in someone's dream, although the Vaishnavas at that time, he'll become very well known. So he says, some fame I may attract by actually revealing this dream and what Nityananda Prabhu told me. But I am helpless. Why? Because if I do not speak, I will incur the fault of being ungrateful. Am I not to sing the glories of the one who has been so very merciful and kind to me? And further, he prayed, Prabhu, please forgive me for my offense. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami went to Vrindavan. And there, by the grace of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, he had darshan of the 6 Goswamis and other Vaishnavas like Srila Swarup Damodar, and the darshan of the deities of Sri Govinda, Sri Gopinath, and Sri Madan Mohan, which he described. So now the next section is about his humility. So how did Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami introduce himself? He wrote these words in his own Chaitanya Charitamrita, 5th Adi Leela, chapter 5. He says, Jagai madhai hoite mui se papishta. What does this mean? He's saying, I am more papishta, more sinful than Jagai and Madhai. So here's the greatest acharya, one of the greatest Rupanuga acharyas. And he's telling, writing it in his book, that actually I am more sinful than Jagai and Madhai. He goes even further by saying, Puri shera kita hoite mui se lagishta. And that means I'm even lower than the worms in the stool. Then he says, Mor nam shune je tar punyak shoy. Mor nam loy je tar pap hoy. Anyone who utters my name, They lose the results of their pious activities. Anyone who utters my name becomes sinful. And then he glorified Nityananda Prabhu. He said, Emona nigrinna more keba kripa kari, eka Nityananda vinu jagat vitori. Who in this world but Nityananda could show his mercy to such an abominable person as me? But just imagine what kind of humility. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is feeling this way because this is the nature of the most exalted Premi Bhaktas. Deep, deep, true humility, insignificance. Just like Mahaprabhu told that we should chant the holy name of Krishna with what? Considering ourselves Trinadapi Sunichena. More low than what? A blade of grass. I'm lower and less significant than a blade of grass. Trinadapi Sunichena Tadadapi Sahishnuna. Tadadapi Sahishnuna. And Mahaprabhu is telling one must become even more tolerant than a tree. More tolerant than a tree. So this is very well known by all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas that Mahaprabhu is teaching. Give all respect to all others, don't desire any respect for oneself. Then what can happen? Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Then one can chant constantly the holy name of Krishna. So, to the extreme degree, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he is feeling just like this. So, section here. Sri Chaitanya is the most glorious scripture. When an excerpt from one of the other books of Srila Bharati Maharaj titled Conversation, cited here, of a conversation by Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. So he's telling, Srila Prabhupada, my Param Gurudev, once posed a question to Rajarshi Saradendu Narayan Rai, who was from a royal family, and he looked very handsome and regal, and he also spoke very sweetly. Now, in parentheses, it's telling here, although this interaction was only briefly referred in his lecture by Srila Maharaj, we thought that the readers would be delighted at the prospect of reading the detailed account of this conversation already published in Srila Vani, as it brings out the unprecedented glories of the timeless masterpiece, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and its equally unparalleled composer, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So I'm going to read this excerpt from that book. Srila Bharati Maharaj is telling my Param Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, the head of philosophy at the University of Lahore in Agastya Villa, Darjeeling. So Prabhupada is speaking to him, and he said, if you were forced to of devotees, but text with you, which text would you choose? Rajarshi Saradendu Rai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, because it has been stated, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gita. Where's the Mahatmya? So, what does that mean? The divine song sung by Sri Krishna is the topmost scripture among all holy scriptures. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. The song of the son of Devaki, Sri Krishna. This is the Ekam Shastra. Then he quoted another verse. This royal person, Rajarshi Sharadendu Rai. Then he quoted another person because he's responding to the question of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, saying another verse is telling also from the Gita Mahatmya. Sarvo Gavo Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. So this is a well-known verse. So he's comparing the Upanishads to a cow. Sarva Upanishado Gavo. Gavo means cow. So all the Upanishads, they're like a cow. And Dogda Gopalanandana. Dogda means the cowherd boy. Sri Krishna is milking this cow, Gopalanandana. Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta. And the wonderful nectaring milk is the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is first taken by the calf-like Arjuna. And Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. And the remaining milk is drunk by the learned scholars and devotees. Gita Sugita Kartavya Shastra Vistarai Yai Shastra Vistarai Ya Swayam Padmanabhasya Mukha Padmad Vinishrita. Attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. What is the need to hear to read any other Vedic book? Will suffice, because it is the essence of all Vedic literatures, and it has Padmanabha, Sri Krishna. Then he quotes the next verse. These are all verses from Mahatmya. Sam Jala Rine Amrita Snanam Samsara Malanashanam. By daily bathing in water, one cleanses oneself of physical dirt only. But bathing even once in the sacred Ganga-like waters of Bhagavad Gita altogether vanquishes the dirt of this gross material existence, samsara mala. After hearing Sri Rajarshi Sharadendu Roy's answer, then Srila Prabhupada said, Age kaho ar, speak further. This is interesting, because this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kept on saying to Ramananda Roy. Just as Mahaprabhu said to Ramananda Roy on the banks of the Godavari River. So now, after thinking deeply for a while, Sri Rajarshi Sharadendu Roy replied, Srimad Bhagavatam. And he cited the following verses. So what was the question that he's answering? Can you say? Be away from the association. You have to be away from this association of the Vaishnavas. You were forced to live without the association of devotees. But you could keep just one spiritual text with you. Which text would you choose? And that's when his first answer of Rajarshi Sharadendu Roy, he immediately replied, why? Because it has been stated. And then he quoted all these verses from the Gita Mahatmya to prove why he considered that would be the one scripture that he would take. But then after hearing his answer, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta said, Age kohoar, speak further. So Then after thinking deeply for a while, Sri Rajarshi Sharadendu Roy replied, Srimad Bhagavatam. So he changed from selecting the Bhagavad Gita to the Srimad Bhagavatam because Srila Prabhupada was urging him to go further. And then in selecting, he began to cite the following verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the second verse of the entire Bhagavatam in the first canto. Dharma projita kaitavo traparamo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vashtu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim va parair ishvaraha sadyo hridyavarudhyate atrakriti shushubis tatkshanat. The translation of this verse. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has been manifested by Sri Vyasadeva, the greatest saint of the primeval times, the true and topmost duty of the living entities, Bhagavad Dharma, has been explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If a person devotedly hears this most sublime scripture and follows the Bhagavad Dharma explained within, his threefold miseries will be destroyed. He will meet with all auspiciousness, and he will then realize true knowledge about the Supreme Truth. Thus he will be able to bind the Supreme Lord within his heart, as per his own sweet will. For a person desirous of attaining the above-mentioned symptoms, there is no need to hear or follow any scripture other than Srimad Bhagavatam. But an applicant of the University of Bhagavad Dharma must have two qualifications. Firstly, he should not engage in what? Kaitava, pretentious, cheating activities. And secondly, he should be a nirmatsara sadhu. That means a person whose heart is full of compassion for all living beings, including himself. So he quoted that verse first, and then he went on to quote from the 7th chapter of the first canto, Yasyam vai shuyamanayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsa shoka moha bhayapaha. This means that mere oral reception of this Vedic literature causes bhakti to Bhagavan Sri Krishna to sprout up at once and extinguish the fire of shoka, moha, and bhaya. That means lamentation, illusion, and fear. Then he quoted the 3rd verse of the first canto. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukadam ritadrava samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasikai bhuvi bhavukaha. Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature, succulent fruit of the wish-fulfilling tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami, and through the disciplic succession of bona fide gurus, it has willingly descended upon this earth in its entirety. It is saturated with the supremely pleasing ambrosial nectar of transcendental rasa, transcendental emotion, and having no skin, hard seed, fibers, or other discardable parts, it is fit for drinking because it is completely liquid. O great devotees, you who are bhavak, well acquainted with the transcendental nectarine emotions of divine love, and rasik, expert in relishing all the specific forms of the liquefied ambrosia of transcendental emotion. Oh, you great devotees, bhavak and rasik, you should repeatedly drink the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam, even in the liberated stage. Indeed, the supremely liberated souls perpetually relish Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he quoted from the Garuda Purana. So many quotations he's giving to explain why he's selecting Srimad Bhagavatam. There it says, Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam Bharatartha Vinirnaya Gayatri Bhashya Rupo So Vedartha Paribringhita. The meanings of the Vedanta Sutra are present in Srimad Bhagavatam, and they are the highest philosophical ascertainments of Mahabharata. Srimad Bhagavatam is the embodiment of the commentary on Brahma Gayatri, and it gives an elaborate explanation of the meanings of the Vedas. So that's a very, very famous verse. Gayatri Bhashya Ruposo. It is the very embodiment of the commentary on the Brahma Gayatri mantra, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And whatever is there in Vedanta Sutra, it is present in Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Mahabharata, the highest philosophical ascertainments of the Mahabharata, are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also the elaborate Vedartha Paribringhita, that means the elaborate explanation of the meanings of the Vedas. Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Triptasya Nanyatra Syadrati Kvachit. 12th canto of Bhagavatam, 13th chapter. This is like the very end of the Bhagavatam. So, this verse is telling Srimad Bhagavatam is accepted as the essence of all Vedanta. Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi. Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate. Whoever has been satisfied by the transcendental mellow bhakti rasa of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that means tad rasamrita triptasya, they've been satisfied by this rasamrita of Srimad Bhagavatam, oh, nanyatra syadrati kvachit. He can never be attracted to any other literature. One who has been satisfied by that bhakti rasa. Then he quotes Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya Kanda. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is saying, Chari Veda Dadhi Bhagavat Navanita. That means that the 4 Vedas are like yogurt, Dadhi. And Srimad Bhagavatam is like what? Navanita. That means butter. And Matilena Shuke Kailen Parikshita. Sri Shukadev Goswami churned that yogurt into butter. And then, who ate that butter? Sri Parikshit Maharaj relished the result. So Sri Rajarshi Sharadendra Narayan Roy, then he said, there are many other verses in various scriptures that similarly glorify Srimad Bhagavatam. One can therefore conclude that Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost among all Vedic scriptures. In my opinion, there's no scripture superior to Srimad Bhagavatam. So, now Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, responded to him, and he again said, Age koho ar, speak further. So what has happened up to this point? First of all, he was said, I would go with the Bhagavad Gita. And he quoted all these verses. Then Srila Prabhupada said, speak further. And then he spoke, I would go with the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And gave all these proofs and said there's many, many more. But then Prabhupada responded, Agi Kahoar, speak further. Then Rajarshi Sharadendra Narayan Roy replied, I am unqualified to say anything beyond this. So then Srila Prabhupada said, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the most glorious scripture. If I were alive to witness the entire world being submerged in water at the time of its destruction, Mahapralaya, I would preserve no other scripture than Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I would protect it by keeping it on my chest while swimming. The void left by the annihilation of all the Vedic literatures would be filled simply by the existence of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in order to gloriously reveal the extraordinary and the divine character of Srimad Mahaprabhu, the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, has described Nityananda Tattva, Sri Guru Tattva, Krishna Tattva, Radha Tattva, Advaita Tattva, as well as Sri Krishna's special manifestation as Pancha Tattva. In narrating the pastimes of Rath Yatra, the cleaning of the Gunjita temple, Srila Kaviraj Goswami has established the glories of Braj, the Brajavasis, their surrender and their service mood to Sri Krishna, and the superiority of the Brajagopis among all the devotees of Sri Krishna. Through the narration of Rai Ramananda Samvad, he has presented the essence of all the Vedic literatures by way of a comparative and progressive analysis of the significant instructions of all the various scriptures, and has established the most astonishing glories of Parakya Ras. I'm going to complete just a few more paragraphs. How Srila Prabhupada is glorifying Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita.
It's amazing. Very much like Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, that conversation.
Right. So then he goes on, Prabhupada goes on. He's describing why Chaitanya Charitamrita is so exalted and elevated. He's mentioning so many different sections and what Krishnadas Kaviraj has revealed. Ramananda Roy Samvad, the Rath Yatra Katha, the Brij Basi's mood, and all the different tattvas. Guru Tattva, Krishna Tattva, Nityananda, all tattvas, Radha Tattva. Then he says, in Rupa Siksha and Sanatan Siksha, he has provided the analyses of the subtlest aspects of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan tattvas. Through his narration of the pastimes of Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur, and others, he has established the splendid glories of Harinam. Then in describing Srimad Mahaprabhu's discussions with Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Sri Prakasananda Saraswati, he has recorded the Lord's thorough rejection of the principles of Advaitavad, non-dualism, and his establishment of the doctrine of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference, by citing reference from Shastra. Moreover, the way Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has described the multifarious pastimes of Srimad Mahaprabhu, in which the Lord has imparted teachings through his exemplary behavior and conduct, is extremely beneficial for the living entities in this Kali Yuga. Then, abiding by the sutra, mitam chasaram chavacho hivagmita. That means that essential truth, spoken concisely, is true eloquence. So abiding by that sutra, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has very concisely explained the essence of all the scriptures in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is possibly due to the above-mentioned reasons that Srila Prabhupada made such a strong assertion about the supremacy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Srila Bharati Maharaj is concluding here, and he says, I used to visit Sri Rajarshi Sharadendu Narayan Roy's home to collect alms, Bhiksha, along with Sri Madhavananda Prabhu, who had taken Harinam from Srila Prabhupada and Diksha from our Gurudev. And there I twice had the opportunity to hear directly from Sri Rajarshi Sharadendu Narayan Roy about Srila Prabhupada's glorification of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And although I developed firm faith in the glories of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita after hearing his account, realization was still missing within me. Even when I later read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita myself, I did not attain realization of Srila Prabhupada's statements. Then, after hearing discourses of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita from the many disciples of Srila Prabhupada over the years, and especially as I began translating Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita from Bengali to Hindi, and I had to pay attention to the meaning of every single word, I became enlightened with ever new explanations of the many spiritual subject matters contained within this great scripture. Through this translation work, I came to understand in a very simple and intuitive way the detailed meanings of many highly subtle verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. I am only now directly experiencing and realizing the import of Srila Prabhupada's words. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is certainly more merciful and beneficial than even Srimad Bhagavatam, the topmost of all Vedic literatures. So in his introduction to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada has described his complete astonishment that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in relating the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has exhibited an unmatched proficiency in understanding the deep meanings of all the various scriptures, an extraordinary insight into otherwise unfathomable philosophical subject matters, an unprecedented and thoughtful expertise in using accessible terminology to describe to the common masses even the subtlest of spiritual principles, and a crystal clear understanding of the Kavya, the Puranas, Itihasa, Smriti, and Ganita, even a branch of astrology. Learned experts predicted that in order to read and follow such an extraordinary transcendental literature, the scholars of the world's many countries would feel inspired to learn Bengali. Srila Kaviraj Goswami's perfection in rendering sweetly toned poetic compositions, that's called Bhav Madhurya Parakashta. So his perfection in rendering these sweetly toned poetic compositions is cherished by all renowned poets of the world. His solemnity in describing the pastimes of Madhur Rasa can be assessed only by highly qualified persons, the likes of whom are extremely difficult to find. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in this composition has presented an extraordinary compilation of the subtlest pastimes of Sriman Mahaprabhu in tandem with citations from various scriptures, and he has thereby removed from the weak hearts of his readers the materially inspired tendency to speculate. The life, the activities, the conduct, and character of Sriman Mahaprabhu, that's called Sri Chaitanya Charita, they are all eternal. And the ideals represented in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita therefore destroy the living entity's inclination for sense enjoyment, bhog pravritti, while establishing them in their true constitutional activity, service to the Supreme Lord, seva vritti. So that is the end of that excerpt. And there's more, but we've way run out of time. And yeah, these are the final statements after he narrated this story. Then he also wrote about why it is a must to glorify Vaishnavas, and also 3 major impediments to Hari Bhajan, and then end notes. So today, being the disappearance day of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, we made some small attempt to glorify his transcendental personality and his contribution of giving the greatest scripture of all time. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj used to say, there has never been another scripture that has ever seen the light of day as compared to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we also spoke about Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pad's life history and cited many examples of his life and how he was the highest example, the ultimate example, by which anyone who will follow as he lived his life, and how he ended his final pastimes on the banks of Shri Radhakund and Shamakund, and how he prayed to Srimati Radharani for her service to her lotus feet. We spoke about that more extensively today. And also Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, we only mentioned, we didn't read so much about him today, but we mentioned that, he was the son of Tapan Mishra. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Varanasi, then at that time he stayed in the house of Chandrasekhar Acharya and every day took his lunch, took his meals at the house of Tapan Mishra. And so, just in brief, very, very short, Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he had the opportunity to serve Mahaprabhu. He was a boy at that time, but he served Mahaprabhu so much. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him instructions that he should stay with his parents and serve them until they leave this world, which he did. He followed that instruction. And he also simultaneously studied under one great Vaishnava, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. He studied under that Vaishnava there in Varanasi. And later on, he came and visited Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, stayed 8 months there, and had very many beautiful exchanges with Mahaprabhu. Then Mahaprabhu instructed him that he should go to Vrindavan. And so he followed that instruction and went to Vrindavan, and there he became one of the 6 Goswamis who were all living in Vrindavan at that time: Sri Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And Raghunath Bhatta Goswami had a beautiful voice, like a cuckoo bird is described. And his main contribution that he would give was to read Srimad Bhagavatam to all the Rasik Vaishnavas, even Rupa and Sanatana. And he would recite and sing each verse, and each verse he would sing in different meters and melodies, 5 different ones. And he would become so overwhelmed with emotion, and all the Vaishnavas would hear from him reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So how topmost personality, an eternal associate of Radha and Krishna in Braj, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, his disappearance day is also today. So all 3 of these Vaishnavas, they also have samadhis on the banks of Radha Kunda. They also have samadhis in Vrindavan. But like Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, his body samadhi is there. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also has a samadhi in Radha Damodar temple, but also at Radha Kunda, and same with Raghunath Bhatta. He has samadhi there in Radha Kunda. So that's the end of our class today. And in the coming days, very various devotees are doing some traveling, so we will try to continue this class and to continue the topic that we have been reading, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on Sri Upadeshamrita verse 2 and 3. That will take us quite some time to complete that commentary. So, and very soon, in just a matter of a few days, begins the Kartik month and Kartik Vrat, which all devotees will be following here in New Braj for the whole month of Kartik. And we will also be having kirtans in the morning and some classes on Sri Damodar Ashtakam from the book published by Srila Gurudev. And also in the evening, we'll continue with our evening time of class. It might change slightly in the evening. So you can stay tuned. I think it may be slightly earlier that we'll begin that class, but we will be studying Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj's Braj Mandala Parikrama book and going on parikrama in our mind and in our heart throughout the month of Kartik. So we invite all devotees to tune in and to hear the nectar of Sri Braj Mandala Parikrama. I'm particularly heart-struck by the fact that I cannot be physically this year in Braj because since 1994 I've been at every Braj Mandala Parikrama during the Kartik month, only missed 1 year when I was sent to Los Angeles by our beloved Gurudev. But the will of Krishna is supreme, and so where he has placed us, what can we do except surrender? And we are trying then to go on Braj Mandala Parikrama internally by mood. So I invite all devotees to participate and tell their friends to participate, because so much auspicious blessings will come to everyone who follows the Kartik month. So on the first day of Kartik, which is also, we're going to be observing the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, who disappeared on the first day of Kartik. And we will be hearing his glories on that day and also take our vows for the Kartik month. So please tune in. All glories to Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and his eternal associates. All glories to 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. All glories to our Sri Rupa Anuga Guru Varga, and all glories to all the Vaishnavas. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubheva patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharika Giridhari Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Radha Govinda Jiu Ki Jai. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.